Hey guys, in this video we're going to be covering Target 3 8.2, and we want to be able to add and subtract complex numbers by applying the properties of real and imaginary numbers. So adding and subtracting complex numbers, so things that have that I, is very similar to when we didn't have an I, right? When we just had a normal variable. So you basically are just combining like terms. Real terms with real terms, meaning constants with constants, and imaginary terms with imaginary terms. So looking at number 10, if I'm adding, none of those signs change. Everything, I can just combine together. So my real part would be only the terms that are constants, right? That's something that does not have an I. So -1 plus a +3. That -1 plus 3 is going to be, -1 plus 3 is a +2. Looking at my imaginary parts, which would be plus I and a plus 4I. You would add the constants that are in front of it. So I do see that 4I, and whatever's in front of that I is just a 1. So 1 plus 4I is going to be plus 5I. Right? In case I ever ask you, this is my real part. This is my imaginary part. Alright, moving on to the next one. I'm subtracting. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky because we have to remember to distribute that negative sign to everything after it. So everything before stays exactly the same. I'm still going to have that 3 minus 21, but when I distribute that negative sign, a negative times a +5 is a -5. A negative times a +3i is going to be a -3i. And I think actually there is a little typo here. It doesn't make sense to have that 21. So I'm going to change that 1 to an I. So please make that 2i. So again, typo. Change that to a -2i, not 21. Alright, so now we can combine those like terms. I'm going to look at my constants, so something that does not have an I. 3 minus 5. So 3 minus 5 is a -2. Looking at those imaginary parts, so the things that have I's in them. -2 and a -3 is going to be a -5I. Again, the part that has no I is the real part. So this part is real. This part is imaginary. Alright, moving on down. Looking at example number 12. Again, same things. Combine those constants together. I'm adding, so I don't have to worry about my signs. Combine those imaginary parts together, and we can simplify. So 8 plus a +2 is 10. -3i plus a +5i is a +2i. Again, this is the real part because there's no i's in there. This is our imaginary part. Kind of gives it away, right? Imaginary starts with I. It has to have an I in it. Very original, I know. Next example, I have a 3 plus 4i minus a -2 minus 6i. So I see that subtraction sign. The first binomial does not change. Remember, binomial just means it has two terms. Whatever comes after does. Negative times a negative is a +2. Negative times a negative is a +6i. Now we can go ahead and combine our constants and our imaginaries. Right? 3 plus 2 and our +4 and +6i. So 3 plus 2 is 5. +4 and a +6 is a +10i. Right? Again, this is the real part, and this is the imaginary part. I'm just going to abbreviate. Alright, that's the imaginary. Yes, I will write it out, so I don't want you to confuse it with an extra. Alright, next one I'm adding. So again, like terms, add my constants together. 8 plus a +2. No, that's 10. Combine my imaginaries, so -3i and a -5i is going to be a -8i. Right, this is my real, Doesn't have an imaginary, doesn't have an I in it. This is my imaginary part. And adding a real plus an imaginary is how I get that complex expression. All right, number 15, I am subtracting, but the first binomial does not change. I would also give your little i's a little tail so you don't confuse them with ones. So that negative sign, negative times a negative 3 is a positive 3. Negative times a negative 4 is a positive 4i. I can now combine my like terms. So I'm going to do my constants first. My negative 3 plus, or negative 1 plus 3 is a positive 2. And my imaginaries, negative I plus 4i. Remember that if you ever have just an I, there's that coefficient of a 1. So negative 1 plus 4 is a positive 3i. This is my real part, does not have an I. This is imaginary because it does have an I. And that brings us to the end of this video. So adding and subtracting, very similar to when we had normal variables, except for now we just have an I. And that I does represent the square root of a negative 1. And you can go ahead and move on to the next activity. Good luck!